They say every empire has a crack, a single hairline fracture, invisible to the naked eye, born not from external pressure, but from an internal flaw. My husband, Julian, built an empire of arrogance, and I, his quiet, underestimated wife, was the flaw running right through its foundation. It wasn't always that way. Once I was Elara, the artist. I painted worlds onto canvas, and Julian was my most ardent admirer. He said my creativity was a beautiful, fragile thing he wanted to protect from the harshness of the world. So I let him. I folded my easel, packed away my paints, and became Mrs. Thorne, the supportive wife, the gracious hostess, the quiet shadow to his brilliant son. Our daughter, Lily, was the light of my life. She has my eyes, wide and curious, and a heart so soft it could break from a harsh word. Julian loved her, in his way. He loved the idea of her, the perfect family portrait. But he didn't understand her quiet nature, and he had no patience for it. The first crack appeared not with a bang, but with a quiet, systematic erosion. It was our 10th anniversary. I'd spent weeks planning a surprise weekend at a secluded inn we loved in our early days. I'd arranged everything, the childcare, the meals, the wine tasting. When I told him, his face didn't light up with joy. It twisted with irritation. "Elara, for God's sake," he sighed, not even looking up from his phone. "I have a merger signing in Zurich that weekend. You know how critical this is. These whimsical little trips of yours, they're charming, but you have to be realistic. My world doesn't stop for sentiment." Whimsical. That was the word he started using for everything I valued. My interests, my friends, my desire for connection, they were all just whimsical, unimportant. The weekend was canceled. He went to Zurich. Lily and I ate the anniversary cake alone. The second crack was wider, more public. It was the company's annual gala. I was wearing a dress I'd found at a small, independent designer I adored. It was elegant, unique. Julian looked me up and down and said, "It's interesting, darling, but for these events, perhaps stick to the established brands. It projects a certain stability." At the gala itself, I was talking with the wife of a major investor, a brilliant woman who ran a nonprofit for arts education. We were discussing a potential partnership, and I was using my old network, my Vanguard name, to open doors he could never budge. Julian swooped in, clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder, and laughed. "Don't let my wife bore you with her artistic theories," he said, his tone dripping with condescending affection. "She lives in a world of color and feeling. I have to handle the boring stuff, like revenue and projections." He then steered me away, whispering, "Let the adults talk business, Elara." I saw the pity in that woman's eyes. Not for me, but for him. He was so blind. But the unforgivable act, the one that crossed the line from emotional neglect to genuine violence, involved Lily. It was her 7th birthday. She's a sensitive soul, my Lily. She feels the world deeply, a trait Julian saw as a weakness. She'd spent weeks in secret painting a portrait of the three of us. It was lopsided, the colors were a joyful mess, our faces were blobs of happy pink, but you could feel the love in every brushstroke. It was her heart poured onto canvas. With trembling hands, she presented it to her father after we sang happy birthday. Her little face was shining with hope and terror. Julian took it, glanced at it for a second, and then chuckled. That cold, dismissive sound I'd come to know so well. "What is this, sweetheart? A Picasso of misery?" He held it up for the room to see, a cruel smirk on his face. "You've definitely inherited your mother's whimsical lack of talent." He then tossed the painting onto the dessert table. It slid through a pile of cake crumbs and landed face down in a puddle of melted ice cream. The vibrant colors began to bleed and run. "Don't waste your time on this," he said, pulling out his phone. "Stick to math. That's where the money is." The look on Lily's face, it wasn't just hurt. It was a fundamental shattering. The light in her eyes, the one that saw magic in a sunset and stories in the clouds, guttered and went out. She didn't cry. She didn't make a sound. She just folded in on herself, becoming smaller, quieter, a ghost at her own party. And Julian? He didn't even notice. He was already on a call, boasting about his latest multi-million-dollar acquisition, stepping over the ruins of his daughter's heart as if they were litter on the pavement. That was the line. My love for him, what little remained, had eroded over years of neglect. But my fury, a cold, hard, crystalline thing, was born in that single, silent moment. I looked at my broken daughter, at the ruined painting, at the man who had caused it all without a flicker of remorse, and I knew. The time for being whimsical was over. That night, after putting a withdrawn and silent Lily to bed, I didn't cry, I didn't rage. I went to the back of my closet, to a fireproof lockbox I hadn't opened in years. Inside were the relics of my old life. A few sketches, a dried flower from my father's funeral, and a thick legal envelope. My father, Elara Vanguard, was a man who believed in preparedness, not paranoia. He'd seen too many fortunes lost to naivete. "The world is not always kind to soft hearts, Elara," he told me once, "so you must have a spine of steel." He ensured my name was never publicly linked to the vast Vanguard trust, and upon his passing, he didn't just leave me wealth, he left me a weapon. The documents in my hand confirmed it. I was the sole beneficiary and managing director of a silent, sprawling investment firm called Aegis Holdings. The name was his joke. Aegis, the shield of Zeus. My shield. My inheritance wasn't just a bank account. It was a chessboard, and I was its anonymous queen. I held a controlling interest with a team of the most discreet lawyers in the world acting as my executors. For years, I'd treated it as a boring administrative task, a quarterly report to skim. That night, I read every word, and I discovered something that made my blood run cold, not with fear, but with purpose. Julian's entire world, his company, Thorn Solutions, his penthouse, his fleet of cars, was built on a foundation of debt and bravado, and a significant, controlling portion of that debt, the very loans he'd used to build his empire, were secretly held by Aegis Holdings. He had spent years boasting about his self-made genius, all while standing on ground I owned. He never once looked down. The plan wasn't born of rage. Rage is messy, impulsive. This was architecture. I shifted from being a wounded wife to the architect of consequences. My goal was not to teach him a lesson. Lessons can be unlearned. My goal was to permanently remove his power to harm us, to make him reap the consequences of his own hubris, systematically and irrevocably. I began by reactivating my relationship with Aegis. I met with Mr. Sterling, the lead counsel, in a quiet, soundproofed office that felt more like a library than a place of business. I laid out my directive, a silent, forensic audit of all of Julian's loans and business dealings. We didn't break anything. We didn't sabotage. We simply identified every single point of failure, every over-leveraged asset, every inflated valuation. We were engineers,
diagnosing the fatal flaws in a condemned building. Then, I created his distraction, Isabella Rossi. She was his new, dazzlingly ambitious junior partner, young, glamorous, and utterly transparent in her desires. Julian, of course, assumed all was blind. "Don't be so paranoid, Elara," he'd say, patting my hand as if I were a family dog. "She's just hungry for success. You have nothing to worry about." He was right. I had nothing to worry about, because Isabella was the perfect instrument. Her presence fed his ego, made him feel invincible, and, most importantly, made him sloppy. He was so busy playing the conquering king with his new, shiny queen, he didn't notice the foundations of his castle turning to sand. Through my Aegis contacts, I even discreetly facilitated a few of their business trips, ensuring he was emotionally and physically distant, completely oblivious to the tectonic shifts happening right under his feet.
Concurrently, I built our future. Using a pseudonym, I rented a beautiful, sun-drenched loft with north-facing windows. I filled it with art supplies, books, and soft blankets. I didn't push Lily to paint. I simply brought her there one afternoon. "This is our place, sweetheart," I told her. "A place where no one is allowed to be unkind. A place for quiet and color." I saw a flicker of the old light in her eyes. It was our sanctuary, a world he knew nothing about. The final, masterful piece was the anonymous donation. Julian's company was teetering on the edge of a liquidity crisis. The audit had shown me exactly how precarious it was. He needed a massive cash infusion, and he needed it yesterday. Through a labyrinth of shell companies and intermediaries, Aegis Holdings offered a rescue package. The terms were brutal: high interest, strict covenants, and a clause that allowed for immediate recall under specific conditions of moral failure. It was a trap, baited with his own desperation. He signed the papers without a second glance, boasting at a charity dinner about the shrewd, anonymous benefactor who saw his true potential. He had no idea he was signing his own surrender. The day of reckoning was the Thorn Solutions quarterly board meeting. Julian had insisted I attend. "I want you to see your husband in his element, Elara," he'd said that morning, adjusting his tie in the mirror. "I want you to see what real power looks like." I wore a simple, elegant navy dress, and around my wrist I wore my mother's bracelet, a delicate platinum piece with a single, stylized V. A signature, for those who knew how to read it. Lily was with me. I told her we were going to see a different kind of magic today, the magic of consequences. The boardroom was a temple to Julian's ego, polished mahogany, floor-to-ceiling windows, his portrait hanging prominently. He stood at the head of the table, Isabella beaming at his side like a trophy. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice a smug symphony. "As you know, we've not only weathered the recent storm, we've secured a landmark investment from Aegis Holdings, a testament to the unshakable faith the financial world has in our leadership and our vision." He was mid-sentence, pontificating about his 10-year plan, when the door opened. My lead counsel, Mr. Sterling, walked in, followed by 2 associates. He was the picture of calm, unnerving efficiency. "Mr. Thorne," Sterling said, his voice cutting through Julian's bluster like a scalpel, "on the authority of Aegis Holdings, we are calling the loan, effective immediately." The room fell into a stunned silence. Julian's smile was a brittle thing. "Calling it? That's impossible. There's a grace period. You can't just—"
Under Section 7B of the agreement, the loan becomes immediately due and payable upon a material loss of confidence in the CEO's moral character or fiduciary responsibility. He slid a document across the table. We have compelling evidence, provided by a concerned party, of you systematically funneling company resources to a shell corporation owned by Ms. Isabella Rossi for personal, non-business-related expenses. A penthouse apartment, private jet travel to Bora Bora, a rather sizable diamond bracelet. It's all itemized here. Julian's face went from smug to confused to a sickly pale. He looked at Isabella, whose own face was a mask of panic. This is a mistake, a misunderstanding. Who is this concerned party? I'll sue them for defamation. That's when I stood. The room's attention, a palpable, electric force, shifted to me. I didn't look at Julian. I first looked at Lily, giving her a small, steady, reassuring nod. Watch this, my love. Then I turned to Mr. Sterling. Mr. Sterling, I said, my voice clear and steady, filling the silent, tense room. Please proceed. Julian stared at me, utterly bewildered. Elara, what are you doing? This is a board meeting. Sit down. The old command was there, but it was weak, desperate. Mr. Sterling didn't even glance at him. He gave a slight, respectful bow of his head to me. Of course, Madam Chairwoman. The word hung in the air. Chairwoman. Julian's brain short-circuited. Chairwoman? What is he talking about? Elara! I walked slowly to the head of the cable, stopping beside the grandiose portrait of him. I looked at the painting, the arrogant tilt of the chin, the smug smile, then at the pale, sweating man before me. You always said I had a whimsical lack of talent, Julian. You were right. My talent isn't for painting pretty pictures. It's for architecture. And I've just dismantled your house of cards.
Aegis Holdings. The anonymous donor who bailed you out was me. The one calling in the debt is me. And the one who will be accepting Mr. Thorne's immediate resignation and assuming control of this company to prevent its total collapse is me. The humiliation was absolute. It happened in the arena he valued most, in front of the people whose respect was his oxygen. He was exposed not just as a fraud, but as the ultimate fool, outsmarted and owned by the woman he told them all not to worry about. I looked at Lily. Her eyes were wide, but the light was back. A fierce, proud, triumphant light. Her faith was not just restored, it was forged in steel. She saw her mother not as a victim, but as a queen. The fallout was swift, concrete, and irreversible. Julian was ousted by a unanimous vote moments after I left the boardroom. The personal assets he'd pledged as collateral, the penthouse, the cars, his precious vintage watch collection, were all seized by Aegis. The illusion of his wealth evaporated overnight. He was left with nothing but the consequences of his own actions, a public disgrace, and a very angry Isabella. He tried to contact me, of course. He left raging voicemails. He sent pleading emails promising to change, to be a better father, a better husband. But a true architect doesn't build something beautiful and strong just to tear it down because the former tenant, now standing in the rain, claims to have seen the error of his ways. The door was closed, permanently. My lawyers handled everything. He reaped what he had sown. I, however, got to work. I stabilized Thorne Solutions, not for Julian's legacy, but for the thousands of people who depended on it for their livelihoods. I sold off the toxic assets, paid down the crippling debt, and installed a competent, ethical CEO who valued transparency over ego. The company is now more stable and profitable than it ever was under him. Our divorce was finalized with brutal, elegant efficiency. My lawyers, the best my name and money could buy,
ensured the settlement was more than generous for Lily and me. It wasn't about the money for me, it was about securing our future and ensuring he could never use financial means to exert control again.
And now, our world is drenched in light. Lily and I live in a beautiful, open home by the sea. The walls are covered in her art, vibrant, bold, and joyful. She paints without fear now. She paints with power and with the unshakable knowledge that her voice, her vision matters. The studio downtown is still ours, a creative laboratory where we make messes and masterpieces in equal measure. As for me, I've started painting again. Not for an audience, not for a gallery, for me. The colors are different now, deeper, stronger, and sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, when the last brushstroke has been laid to rest, I'll walk down to the shore. I'll stand there, the salt air on my skin, and look out at the horizon, vast and untamed. There is no malice in my heart, no burning desire for further revenge. There is only a profound, serene satisfaction. The satisfaction of an architect who saw a flawed, dangerous, and crumbling structure and with calm precision and immense patience replaced it with something strong, beautiful, and safe. I can hear Lily laughing as she chases seagulls, her voice carrying on the wind, a sound of pure, untethered joy. That is my victory. That is my last laugh. Not a cackle of triumph, but the quiet, enduring sound of peace, hard-won and deeply deserved. The empire of arrogance has fallen, and from its ruins we have built a kingdom of our own.